Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from the penthouse suite in the City of Champions, your not-so-private eye, Mark Chiappetta, and the On the Mark podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Chiappetta, host of the On the Mark Show, Covert to Overt. I'm your resident private investigator, and I come to you from here, the City of Champions, downtown Brockton, Mass. And I'm slightly intimidated, slightly excited. And this is something that, I wouldn't say it defines me, but it's a part of my investigative journey in life. And that is the world of Scientology. And with me today, I have Tony Ortega from the Underground Bunker, former editor-in-chief of the Village Voice. I think that's where I first met you, at least through a phone conversation. I had done the Howard Stern show. And next thing I know, I get a message to speak with the man at the Village Voice. So, Tony, welcome to the On the Mark podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I will be quite honest with you that I know who you are, and I saw you interviewed on Going Clear, and I want to believe this, or maybe I'm wrong. You may have said something to me, or someone may have said something to me, but I believe I was once asked to be interviewed for that as well, and I think I turned it down.
Might have been, sure, you might have been. I'm
almost positive I was back after my Stern appearance. So let me give a little bit of a bio about how I got wrapped up into the world of Scientology. I think you're going to be curious to know that because I guess you were the aforementioned, you're the expert on Scientology, and it's kind of defined you as a reporter and an author, and I guess you could kind of call yourself a sleuth as well, right? Investigative journalist.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to uncover Scientology's controversies, and it's been almost 10 years since we spoke, and I wrote that story about you, so it's interesting to catch up with you again.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, it was May of 2011 I appeared on Stern, and all right, so let's go back. So I've been a licensed PI for close to 30 years now. Started my business early 90s. Traditional investigator, I have a great practice. I'm mainly a criminal detective. That's what I specialize in, or what I've kind of always specialized in. But I remember back in, I think it was January of 2000, I was at the Lowell District Court. And back then doing research just on someone, to some case I was working on. And I got approached by a woman. A very nice woman came up to me and asked if I was a PI, and I said, yeah, I'm an investigator. And she said, have you ever, would you be interested in picking up some additional work? And we're going back, 21 years. So I'm in my early 30s. I haven't been an investigator too long, and I'm always looking to develop business. And she said, I work for an organization called the Church of Scientology. And I'm like, great. Who the fuck are they? Like I had no clue. I didn't know what the Church of Scientology was then. And in the year 2000, I don't know if it, was it a household thing back then? Maybe Cruise and Travolta, I think that was the connection that I put with it. And I said, sure, absolutely. And I think I was quoted saying this: if the money's green and the work is legal, then I'll do it, as an investigator. So they brought me to their office in Boston. I think is it Marlborough Street? Is that where they're located? Do you know, in Boston?
Well, they've changed it, so I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah,
so they brought me there. They brought me in. They said, would you be interested in coming in and meeting with the powers that be? They want to do an interview of you. And there's 4 or 5 people, if my memory serves me correct. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's whatever. You're gonna hire me, and you're going to have work for me, then I'll certainly meet with you. And then they asked if I would do something called the E-meter. So they pulled out this contraption and asked if I would. Now, I'm not sure if that was on my first interview or if I actually went back for a second interview. And let me digress. Like, Scientology is a big deal. It's dictated your life for the last 10 years. But for me, I only saw it as just another one of my clients that I had a handful of, and it was just potential investigative work.
But not too many of your other clients whipped out a machine to ask you to.
No. Yeah. So I remember them whipping out the machine, and again, I think I've been quoted saying that it looked like something that someone made in a shop class in high school.
Right,
like
right.
it wasn't anything extravagant. Like they weren't like putting nipple clamps on me or injecting me with anything. It was just like 2 cylinders or something that I held, and they asked me a series of these very weird questions.
Were you with the FBI? Were you working for a newspaper?
Yes.
Those are the questions they asked, right?
Those are the questions they asked. But before I touched those little cylinders, I had to rub some shit in my hands. I don't know what it was, and I'm like, all right, is this something that's going to enter my bloodstream? Am I going to, go into is it sodium pentothal inside that ointment that they had? And so I made a quick decision, and that made me uncomfortable, actually. Put this shit on your hands and then hold on. And I forget what their excuse was or what their reasoning behind it was, Tony, that they wanted me to do that, but maybe to get a better grip on the little, handlebar things. And believe it or not, guess what? I passed with flying colors. So we'll take that to you. Now, do you have any questions you may want to ask me based on that?
Well, that's fascinating that you were asked to get on the E-meter as a private investigator. I may have heard that before, but I don't remember. I mean, I know they do it to their own people all the time.
Right, during their auditing process.
Right, but the thought to do that, and they not just auditing, they interrogate their own people all the time.
Now, let's take a step back for the people that are going to be watching this. Can you explain to those out there, that what Scientology is, just outside of hearing about the celebrities that are connected with it?
Right. Well, Scientology is the invention of a mid-century science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard, who in 1950 came out with the idea that all of your problems as an adult are the result of you being re-stimulated on terrible things that happened to you earlier in your life, particularly when you were a fetus in the womb. Mm-hmm. And so he got people very excited about the idea that he claimed that with his training, his processes, he could help you remember what you had been through as a fetus inside your mother that had then caused you to have problems later in life. And a lot of the examples he used in the book Dianetics was rough sex between mom and dad. So because your dad was a little too rough with mom while you were in there, it literally is causing your problems 40 years later. Now, there's absolutely no science to this, but this was the obsession of people who first got into Dianetics, was we need to use this man's techniques to try to remember what life was like in the womb and when we were born. That was the first couple of years, but then people weren't satisfied with only going back that far. Mm-hmm. Then they decided they wanted to find out what traumatic things had happened to them in previous lives. That's the difference between Dianetics and Scientology. Scientology is about recovering your memories of things that happened to you thousands, millions, billions of years ago on other planets. And those experiences are what's supposed to affect you today. And that's that's when the E-meter was introduced in 1951, I think, mm-hmm. to help confirm that you were remembering things that really happened. So that's the process, is they ask you a ton of questions, hundreds and thousands of questions over days while you're holding those things, and they're watching the meter to try to help you come up with these wild stories about things that happened to you millions of years ago. Now, they're telling you these are real things that you're remembering, but Scientologists, after they come out, say, I think maybe I kind of invented those things. But whatever, that is the process, and that's why they think that that machine is infallible and is really reading your mind. I would tell you that, on a polygraph machine, there are 4 inputs, right? There's respiration, heartbeat, blood pressure, and then finally the 4th one is skin galvanism. The E-meter is only that fourth one. It's only the skin galvanism. They measure with you holding something in the hand. So it's
Right.
much less,
Less credible.
much less credible.
Yeah.
Even with a polygraph, even with all four of those things hooked up, all a polygraph examiner could do is say that when Mark answered this question, he exhibited stress.
Right.
His breathing quickened, his pulse, and that suggests that you may have been lying. But they can't say that
maybe I was an FBI agent or
right. But they can't. Even a polygraph examiner with all four of those inputs can't say that this was a lie. All they can say is he was stressed when he said that.
Yeah.
Now the Scientology thing is even less accurate,
and that's why it's not admissible. That's why polygraph.
Not admissible.
It's not admissible in most states.
But Scientologists believe that it can read your mind. So if you believe that it can read your mind, it's a very powerful interrogation tool.
And in their world, it is admissible to them.
Exactly.
But lucky, apparently I'm an honest man, and I was telling the truth at the time. And I'll be honest with you, at the time I'm saying to myself, hey, I'm a rookie investigator. This is a huge organization. This is work that I need. They never asked me to do anything illegal, at that point. I think the first case I ever did for them was illegal, but only minor. Something that I would probably even do if it was another client. But so after I had passed that exam with flying colors, and that local office was run by someone that I've actually had a friendship relationship with over the years. He's an actor, and his dad, I won't mention his name, but his dad ran that chapter in Boston because this is where this particular kid grew up. I believe when I was done, they handed me Dianetics. I know they handed me Dianetics. They told me to go home and read it. They also knew my story because I'm very open about my life, and I may have probably even mentioned it, but aside from being an investigator, I'm a huge advocate for muscular dystrophy. My twin sons have a rare form of MD called Duchenne's, and that's something that I speak about openly because I advocate. So I don't know if they looked at me as someone that may have some weakness because of that or something, and that was something that interested them in me. But I think my demise with the Church of Scientology, which we can talk about as we go along, may have been something to do with my strong personality. I'm actually the complete opposite. Like, I am someone that you don't take advantage of. I play by the rules for the most part, although investigators do live in that gray area. We kind of live in the middle.
Can you tell us about that first job that was something?
No, absolutely. So the first job, so they handed me Dianetics, and I looked at it, and I read about 2 pages, and I said, what's this fucking trash? And I just threw it somewhere. I don't have it anymore. I threw it out. And I said, I don't give a shit about this. Like, I don't really care. I just want an assignment, and I want to make money, and I want to pay my mortgage. If these people are whack jobs, because I started doing some research on them, and I'm like, geez, these people are paranoid. They're a little tapped. But again, my business is built on people that are paranoid. I've swept many houses for listening devices and bugs and things of that nature, and non-Scientology related. Like, someone will call me. I get calls every day from people that say, I'm driving to work and there's a shiny little thing that's following me. I'm like, well, it could be a fucking star. I don't think it's an alien spacecraft, but yeah. And depending on how business is at the moment, sometimes I'll take one of those cases, but most times I'll say, no, I don't want to. But so the first case I remember them assigning me was in Chinatown in Boston. Now, Chinatown in Boston used to be called the Combat Zone. I think the Combat Zone, like a rough area, a lot of nightclubs, strip joints, a lot of crime, organized crime. And there was an accounting firm. And I believe I was just assigned to crawl in a dumpster, without giving names, without violating, the contract that I'm probably still binded to 21 years later. It was a dumpster. It was in an alley. and it was filled with trash bags. So do you know where the crime comes in there?
If it was, I guess, the location of the dumpster, if it wasn't on the street corner, if it was back in their private sort of alley or something, is that what?
No, I mean, trash in Massachusetts, if you put bags out on a curb, it's considered abandoned, and it's free game for everyone.
Right.
The dumpster is private property. It's owned by
dumpster. Okay, dumpster.
So I was crawling in private property.
I got you.
You know, but I'm 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. You know, I brought my Glock with me. I had my buck knife and I had my flashlight, and I popped it open, and I spent an hour in there, if not longer. And you know, it was corporate trash. It wasn't stinky ass trash. And I sliced the bags open until I found the particular floor with this particular firm or whatever, and then I jumped out and I handed it off to someone. Now I was assigned to a couple of local people that were kind of my handlers, you could say, and they were the ones that would assign me cases, and they're the ones that would.
Did they have a special code name for that, for trash retrieval?
Yeah, it was called a D-line.
D-line. Okay, yeah.
That's why I used to think I was a garbologist. I thought that was sexier, but but apparently it was called a D-line. So
D-line, yeah.
You know, and as I started doing work for them, again, I try not to judge people. They, you know, and in full disclosure, and I even wrote about this a little bit in my book, that they were always very nice to me. Now, whether they were being nice to me because they had ulterior motives, you know, I'm not sure. But the girl that I dealt with, who actually is on some YouTube videos, here locally, was always very kind, very empathetic towards my kids, my situation, and in every job that they ever assigned me, typically was traditional investigative work. Now, surveillance, records search, and I was really only assigned to like the Northeast, you know, New England area. And
I think when we talked last time, it was clear that for the most part they were assigning you to former church members.
Former church members, 100%, because you know, after we spoke the other day, and when I was booking you on the show, I went back and looked at some emails. One particular person who's deceased was someone's that they had me surveilling from time to time. And I just remember it being very traditional stuff. I remember them being very paranoid, which we know, and maybe I'm wrong, but back then, 99, 2000, blogging, posting, you know, things were different. Things were evolving, I think, at a real rapid pace as far as putting information out there. So if you're a paranoid person and all of a sudden you got shit coming at you 100 miles an hour, this person says this and that, they were just spinning out of control. You know, and it seemed as if they just wanted stuff, like they used to tell me, for a rainy day. You know, watch this person for a rainy day. Go to this conference or this seminar of an ex-member, one of them that begins with an H, the last name, and listen and play Stuttering John. You know what that means? Remember Stuttering John from the Stern Show? He would go places and ask stupid ass questions.
Right.
You know, some of my assignments were like that. And I'm like, look, you know, hey.
Well, one thing that I know Scientology was very good at, because they had learned from studying actual intelligence agencies, is compartmentalization.
Yes.
So they wanted one thing from you. They wanted you to follow a particular person or go through their trash, bring back the material. They're not going to tell you what they did with it.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you that what they did with it. They create smear websites. They try to get people fired from their jobs. I mean, they do a lot of scummy things, but that, you know, they weren't going to tell you about any of that.
Right. And you know what? And, you know, I do have some guilt for that. As time went along and I started reading more and more people started to out them, and there were television shows and specials, you know, but back then unless I just, you know, subconsciously ignored it, I just said, look, you know what? it's no different than me getting trash for another client that's non-Scientology, because they're going to use that for possible litigation. They're going to use that to, to maybe get someone's assets, and use it in a court of law. So the way I saw it was, and the way they used to sell it to me was that these people say bad things about us, so we need to protect ourselves. And, being a little bit young and a little bit naive, a little bit hungry, I just said, you know what, I justified it in my brain and said, I'm pulling trash because it's legal. It's on a curb, well, except for the dumpster, and I can pick it up, and what you do with it is, up to your law firm. And I'm getting hired by essentially a law firm in LA, a big, powerful law firm that, like every other client that I work for, so it was, and I only did 2000 to about 2007. And I made it very clear to them that I wasn't interested in becoming like a full-time guy. I had a business. They were just one of my clients. I have sick kids at home, and I didn't have any interest in, going to certain places and staking it out for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So maybe that's why they only use me sparingly. Maybe they thought they couldn't trust me past that. I'm not sure. I mean, what's your theory on that?
Well, I mean, they use a lot of different people. Some people they use a little, some people they use a lot. I think you're right. I think there are some people that they rely on very heavily who, if you stopped in 2007, then you just missed the big fun in 2008 when Anonymous came around, and there was a ton of work for private investigators.
I saw that.
To infiltrate Anonymous for them, to follow people, and yes, to sit outside their house for weeks at a time. And, there are definitely people they use at different sorts of levels. Sounds like, let me ask you this. When you were asked to check on somebody, how important was it that let's say, somebody, an ex-member.
Yeah.
Did they talk to you about whether they wanted that person to realize that you were looking at them? Was it important that they not know that you were watching with them, or that it was actually part of the operation that they did want the target to know that you were there?
No. And and when I've done, since we spoke the other day and I did some research on YouTube, I was pretty shocked with some of the stuff that I saw, because looking back at some of my own emails, it was a lot of traditional stuff. We need you here at this location in New Hampshire. If you need to rent, a surveillance work van or something, so you're not seen, that's fine. You can bill us for that. So it was more along the lines of real traditional stuff, which is what kind of throws me off, based on the stuff that I've read, that they really kind of used me for stuff that was strictly legitimate investigative stuff for the most part. And, the person that I dealt with in LA, I saw pop up on, and I'm trying to refresh my memory now. It's 2007, there's a lot's happened in my life since then. Especially, I lost my hair. But, so the person that I used to connect with out there, I always thought his name was something different than what I saw on the videos. Now, this certain person on these videos that I saw is a very prominent, high-ranking investigator in the church, and he's the one that's seen on some of these YouTube videos harassing the gentleman that does the show with Leah Remini. And I always thought his name was Jim. I never knew.
Can we say his real name? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, fine.
We're talking about Dave LeBeau, right?
Yeah. I thought his name was Jim Falcon.
Yeah. Well, the name of his company is Falcon.
Well, you know what? I just realized that the other day. You fucking kidding me? Because again, they took themselves serious. I took it like it's a job. All right. He says his name's Jim. I'm a man of my word. Nice to meet you, Jim. And he was always pretty nice to me. And I did fly to LA on a couple occasions, rode with him on a couple of different jobs. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I will tell you this. If it was anything like I saw during those videos, I wouldn't have done it. I would have told them to go fuck themselves, and I would have packed up my shit and I would have went home, because I don't harass people. That's not me as a person, you know. Like I have sick kids. It's not the game I play, and that's kind of outside my boundaries of a licensed private investigator. I had more integrity than that. Maybe they sensed that in me, or maybe I just missed that era of what was going on, like you said.
Well, I think they've always had these different categories of people, and yeah, the people who do the dirty trick stuff and the harassing type of stuff, they're always the ones that get the most press. But and of course, we knew about Dave's predecessor was a guy named Gene Ingram. Gene Ingram was their chief dirty tricks guy for years and years. He would impersonate cops and just do all kinds of unethical things. And his job was to, really disrupt people's lives and hurt them. He retired, and LeBeau had come up being trained by him. LeBeau took over those kind of things. But sometime around, I want to say about right after I think you and I talked, I started learning about some other PIs that they had hired long-term, full-time, who it was very clear were supposed to keep extremely quiet about what they were doing. They were not supposed to be harassing people. They were just gathering information, in particular these two ex-cops that for 24 years, full-time, their job was to follow one guy.
Whoa. 24 years.
24 years.
Wow.
And they told me, and the reason they were talking to me was that they had then been dumped and they were suing for breach of contract. And so they talked publicly for one day to me and then to the guys at the Tampa Bay Times. It was an amazing day. And they told me that their job, the number one rule, the target cannot know you are following him. So they would go through all these elaborate things. Like you said, they would rent a house. They rented the house next door. They would send in friends to make friends with them. I mean, all these things, but always make sure they don't know they're being followed. So that's when I learned that as much as Scientology has a reputation for guys like Dave LeBeau or Jim Lynch, who were paid to get in your face and make your life scary, there were these other people that were much more shadowy, much more just gathering information. And they use a lot of different people. Their budget must be insane.
Now that LeBeau guy, again, always nice to me. Never had any issues with him, and I don't mind saying that on the record. Talked to him over 7 years, hundreds of times. Assigned me cases, things that seem normal to me, but again, never crossed the line. Now, I don't know. I kind of equate it to when I was in my early 20s, I was a prison guard. And when I was 18, I was a prison guard. And then I packed up my bags and I went out to Hollywood to try to be an actor. And just something I wanted to do. My parents thought I was nuts. Just something that I just felt like I needed to do. And I went out with some other guys, and I saw those guys getting taken advantage of by certain people of whatever, certain sexualities, not their sexuality. Not that there's anything wrong with it, to quote, Seinfeld. And I never went down that road because I'm who I am, and I respect everyone. I treat everyone the same, but I'm not a weak person where I'm gonna make a mistake and then someone's gonna fucking own my ass. All right. And a lot of these guys out in Hollywood that I went out there with, they ended up having their asses owned because they made some judgment calls that was embarrassing to them or they wouldn't want known. I never played that game with the Church of Scientology. I'm a straight shooter. You give me something, I don't like it, I'm going to fucking tell you, and you don't like it, you can go fuck yourselves.
Well, let me ask you something. So you left in 2007, and then a few years later, you went on Howard Stern and talked about working for the Church of Scientology. Did they express any displeasure at that?
Never any repercussions at all. And I looked at my contract with the law firm. I didn't reveal any names. I know there's certain cases that are highly publicized that I worked on, some that a lot of people know about, some that have been reenacted, in cartoons, things of that nature. I know that I've worked on some of those cases, but I didn't talk about anything. I didn't write about anything in my book. Quite frankly, I wrote that they were always nice to me. And that they didn't take advantage of me. And I always felt it was, like I said, because I wasn't one to get taken advantage of. And maybe they started to realize that about me. And at the same time, I started to become more known in the public and in the media, even before Stern. I have sick kids. I was running charity events. I was doing news stories. I wasn't talking about my affiliation with the church when I was working for them because it was a confidential client. But I was just more out there, and my face was more out there, kind of like the name of my show, Covert to Overt. And, there was never any breakup of the marriage. It was just kind of, they stopped calling me. Never any dissatisfaction for anything I ever did. Nothing. They stopped calling. And maybe it's because I did express to them that I do have other areas of expertise, and I didn't want to be lumped in, but I did get to go to the Celebrity Center. I did get to tour the whole building. I went down to the basement. When I was there, Tom Cruise came in through through his entrance. Chit-chatted with him a little bit. Met with the law firm. I don't know why at the time they would have flown me out there to meet with those people. Maybe they were casing me out to see if I was a potential candidate for someone that could do, more for them. But like I said, never once did I ever do anything when I rode with Jim, we'll call him. Did he ever harass anyone with me? Because if he did, on my.
Did you ever get the sense from him that he was a Scientologist himself?
You know what? That was a question that I used to always ask myself, and kind of like indirectly kind of question him, and I would try to like interrogate him a little bit. I remember, and I could never get a straight answer out of him if he was or he wasn't. That's one thing I do remember. Yeah, is he?
Well, we always assumed he wasn't because, most of these, like Gene Ingram was just a former cop, and the guys that followed Pat Broker were former cops. And we just figured they're doing a job, like you're saying you were. Just, had an assignment doing a job. Yeah. Well, when the Rathbons sued Scientology in 2013 because of the Squirrel Busters incident, this was a little group of protesters that LeBeau was running. Suddenly he submits this declaration to court saying, well, the reason why I was doing this is not because I'm some evil private investigator, because I'm a Scientologist and I was offended.
Oh, wow.
And we're all kind of like, what? Yeah. I don't know whether to buy it or not, but he claimed to the court that he was this devout Scientologist and he was offended at what these ex-Scientologists were saying. And so that's why he was motivated to do this special work. I don't know if I buy it.
I just think they kept me on and as I've researched more and after I watched Going Clear and after I've done more homework on them, I did feel a little dirty, but I also feel a little conflicted because there is one person within the church that, has helped me with some charity stuff, who's very nice to me. But one of his handlers being, maybe, one of his parents seems to, I don't know. I don't think she or he cares for the relationship. And this person is very nice and very empathetic towards my kids. So there was always that conflict, like super nice. But then I read about what they do. But then I'm like, you know what? I've always lived life with treat someone the way they treat me. And this person was always nice to me. So maybe I need to give him the benefit of the doubt. So maybe the church itself intentionally creates all this confusion. So someone like me doesn't know how to make, the right decision when it comes to, I don't know. It's always been a frustrating thing with me for over the years. Like you read all this shit about them, but then you know one or two of them personally, and then the nicest people on the planet. So what's wrong here? What am I missing?
Well, Mark, I'm going to let you wrestle with your own conscience because I don't think I can offer you absolution on this. I'm not in favor of private investigators working for the Church of Scientology. I'm glad you stopped. Let me just put it that way. I'm glad you don't do that anymore.
One of my favorite jobs I did for them was when John Travolta was in town promoting his movie there, Battlefield Earth. And
What did they have you do?
Well, he had his own security, I recall. I think they might have been either retired LAPD or whatever the case may be. But I was more of a profiler, just someone standing back in the crowd looking for faces that potentially could be disrupting a public appearance. But to me at the time, holy shit, I get to meet Tom Cruise. I mean, not Tom
when you were profiling the crowd, were you supposed to be like part of the crowd and not supposed to be like nobody was going to look at you and go say, "Oh, he's working for Travolta"? You were supposed to just blend in.
No, I blended in, and if I recall, I had like shots of people, and I was just looking for faces and names in the crowd, and if there was somebody that I saw, I reported back to whoever my superior was on that assignment. So,
and were these critics of the church that were the mugshots?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. So there seemed to be a lot of that stuff. And again, I remember taking a few road trips into Pennsylvania on some things, doing some research, doing some surveillance in some of those parts. But I think that's the furthest I ever traveled for them on a job. It was either Mass, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, but I remember going into PA once or twice to do a few things many years ago. And again, top of my head, traditional type stuff. But I do know that one of the that gentleman that we spoke about in one of my emails, I did recognize the name of a different law firm other than the one that hired me. That he mentions in a lot of those YouTube videos, and that comes, that passed through some of my old emails. Now, sadly, I don't have any of my old case files anymore for them. I've been approached by the Inquirer. I've been approached by Mark Povich. I've been approached by everyone. During a divorce or something, a storage unit got destroyed and files got thrown out. So what would have I done with that stuff? Me being a man of integrity, I probably would have done nothing with them because I signed a contract with them to keep everything confidential. And that was, and that's my word as an investigator. And that's, that's how I work my profession now. I wouldn't want a client now thinking that I'm going to reveal names and sources and things like that, because that's going to hurt me going forward. I got 20 more years to do this shit, and have a decent reputation as, as a crime guy. I specialize in murder cases and pretty much everything, so.
Well, what can you say to ex-Scientologists who are coming out now and maybe thinking of speaking up publicly? What can they do to minimize their risk of being surveilled, messed with? What would you tell them to do to be careful about private investigators?
Just be aware of your surroundings, and if you do see someone, report them to the local police. People shouldn't be hanging around in neighborhoods unless they check in with the cops and unless the cops know. Especially in some of these suburban neighborhoods. Cities are different, but yeah, and be careful when you're approaching them, because you don't know what kind of trouble you're going to get yourself in. Call the cops. Tell them to get the hell out of there and shred your shit.
Shred your stuff.
Shred your trash, keep your blinds closed. And if I was an ex-member and they, and I thought about that after I had done the Stern appearance, I go, are these motherfuckers going to stop watching me? Because if they are, I'm going to go out and probably break their, probably punch them in the face. Because I wouldn't put up with that shit. And maybe that's a message that I sent to them from the very beginning, that's, dig through my trash all you want. I wear shit on my sleeve. I say it like it is. There's not many secrets out there about me. I've been criticized as an investigator that's kind of come mainstream myself and put my face out there. After I had done the Howard Stern show, I did an undercover assignment for this person, and I was assigned to try to retrieve some stolen skin removal equipment, expensive equipment like laser equipment that removes like skin and not skin, removes hair and shit like that off your arms. And I went in undercover and had a pseudo name. And when this person left the office, so I could unchange, so they look at me. I'm looking behind the machine to get serial number to see if this is the shit that was stolen, and everything went perfect. And then I leave and I get a phone call later saying, "Look, you motherfucker, I saw you on Howard TV." So at that point, I said to my wife, I'm like, look, I think the days of me doing undercover stuff are over. I don't mind knocking on doors. I'm currently working on, I'm the lead investigator on Murder on the Cape, the Krista Worthington, the fashion writer in New York. My client, Chris McCowan's serving 3 life sentences. I'll be on Fox Nation soon talking about that on a documentary. But that's one of my more high-profile criminal cases. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a chapter of my life that part of me, that likes the glitz and the glory. It's like, damn, I wish I kind of got involved in it some more. But I'm glad that I got out of it before I had to actually make a decision and say, you know what, I'm done with this. What you guys do is not investigative work. It's bullying. It's stalking. It's criminal harassment, I guess you could call it. So there's a lot of laws, I think, that their investigators are breaking. Now, if, in the laws of Massachusetts, Tony, are different. Like, I'm licensed for the Massachusetts Department of State Police. I have to live up to a certain code as an investigator, certain ethics. It seems like a lot of these PIs that I've Googled and I've seen on YouTube, there's a lot of states that don't require private investigators to actually have licenses. So they're kind of rogue. But if you're a licensed investigator and you're trained and you own your own agency, you shouldn't be, doing the shit they ask you to do. I can tell you that. The shit that I did was, again, I'm not justifying it, but it was all within the legal limits within my practice. So I don't know. What do you got going on aside from tell us about the underground bunker a little bit. What can people?
Well, so yeah, I left The Voice about a year after we had that interview to write a book, and I wrote a book about one particular woman who was the target of Scientology's probably most amazing harassment campaign over many years. And but I kept writing about Scientology every day at my own website, TonyOrtega.org, the Underground Bunker. And so, I keep a close watch on all the litigation, the criminal prosecutions. Scientology, you hit one thing right on the head. You mentioned that when you started to work for them around the year 2000, they were starting to figure out that they needed to be online and they needed to understand the online world because they were late to it. They resisted going online, and they were kind of making some baby steps, I think, when you first got there.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of stuff online. The members, they still try to keep it somewhat secret. And so part of what I do is bring to the public what Scientologists are saying behind the scenes online. So we get a sense of what's going on. We do our best just to kind of keep an eye on where the organization is and where it's going, how it's dealing with various things. So we have a story every day at 7 a.m. I have a lot of great commenters who were Scientologists themselves or have just studied it for a long time, really smart people that keep me on my toes.
Yeah.
And, it's an interesting time because, Danny Masterson, I suppose you ran into him at the Celebrity Center, did you?
Yep.
You saw him?
I know the name, yeah.
Okay. Well, he's facing 45 years to life in prison for raping 3 women who were all Scientologists at the time.
That's the stuff that's blown my mind that I've read about since. And the one thing that I did notice about them is that, and when I dealt with them, is that they did look straight through you. There was a disconnect with all of them. And I did some security for them, I believe, at one of their big function they have, their big musical function.
I was just going to ask if you went to one of the big events at all. Okay.
Yeah, just outside stuff. And it seemed like everyone you came in contact with had that like they were reprogrammed or something. It's very weird because I think I mentioned to you in an email that I've done some work for some other, I guess you could call them cult-like religious organizations, and you pretty much get the same vibe from all of those people. And I always said to myself, people would say, well, how can you work for the Church of Scientology? They're creepy. And I'm like, well, and at the time, maybe I justified a little bit that they do help certain people. They do take, help rehabilitate, people of certain things or certain ways, but maybe they brought them in to prey on them even further, which just very weird. And again, the checks came on time and they took a great hourly rate. So it was cool. But what about you? I mean, are you taking that advice? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty careful.
Are they harassing you, or have they slowed down?
No, they're always smearing me online every day. Mike Ritter, Leah Remedy, and I, and Ron Miscavige, and a couple other people just get it all day, every day online. The in world stuff, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. But 25 years now, I've been writing about Scientology, and they've been, doing some real harassment for about 10 years, and they're always trying to get my wife fired from her job by trying to intimidate her bosses and stuff. It's just really ridiculous, and it's annoying. But
get over it. Like you said, they spun out of control in the beginning. They didn't know how to handle it, and but it does seem like they're more out in the open now, and more people are exposing them. Like Leah, and yourself, and yeah, I mean, it's a crazy ass phenomenon, but it seems like a lot of people still kind of buy into it. So it's
I mean, it's much smaller than it used to be. It's much smaller, and they do have some celebrities, but not really very many.
Yeah.
It's the same old celebrities they've had for 30 years.
Yeah.
And they're struggling getting new people. But you have to understand, all of this that we're talking about, the programs about following people and everything, it all comes from what L. Ron Hubbard wrote in the 50s and 60s. He created a playbook for them that they follow to the letter, and that they can't change because he's dead now.
Well, he did say that if you want to become rich, you start a religion, right?
Yes, that was actually before he wrote Dianetics. About a year before, he said that, the real money was in creating a religion. And Scientology denies that, but I've seen paperwork on it. I don't doubt that he said something like that at the time. But he did create these programs for harassing people and destroying people, and they follow that playbook, and they cannot change from it. So they're still doing the same. Like I said, I think there's different levels of it, and some of it is just watching. Some of it is just, like I talked to somebody whose job was simply to research every single thing I have ever written in my life.
Wow.
So Scientology has all that on file. Now that person, and I will tell you that the person I talked to actually apologized to me for being part of this operation.
Wow.
That person didn't mean me any ill will, but that information then gets turned over to somebody who maybe is not like you, just somebody working for the church, but maybe is a Scientologist, is a little more hardcore, is willing to harm another human being. Mm-hmm. See, that's where things, like I said, they compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
And they know you're not going to do something with it to directly harm a person, but they give it to somebody who will.
Yeah.
And they have people like that.
Yeah, they prey on the weak, and I think that they saw that I wasn't weak, and if I was, who knows what they would have offered me to do, and what level it would have gone to. But I appreciate you coming on, being candid. You're doing me a big favor by coming on here. I'm sure everyone's going to be watching this now and wondering, because, and it's funny because I have Googled in the past. They have like lists of. You probably reported by you, but the private investigators' names are out there. So prior to me doing the Stern Show, nobody ever knew that I had done work for the Church of Scientology. That's when I kind of came out of the closet as far as an investigator for them. But prior to that, my name was really never known. So I guess for my ego, I wasn't important enough for them to do something that was going to. Well,
there are a few people who have come forward. I mean, you were one of the first, definitely. But then A woman named Sierra Westerman came forward and talked about how she had infiltrated Anonymous for them. Those two gentlemen I mentioned earlier talked about following Pat Broker for 24 years. So there have been a few people who have come forward, but definitely you were one of the first. And that's what really caught my attention was here you are on Howard Stern talking openly about getting people's trash for the Church of Scientology.
Well, Howard was certainly interested. He was intrigued. The book was about cheating, but there was one chapter about them, and Howard was certainly intrigued by it. But you know, I guess any advice I could give any investigators out there that are being, I guess, courted by them to run away. You know, especially if you're trying to start your practice. I didn't know any better at the time, and as I read going forward some of the accusations, there's too many accusations of things to not be true. So it kind of made
I'm glad to hear you give that advice. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, and I second guess it. It's not worth affiliating yourself with an organization like that if you're trying to develop an agency, as an investigator. They made it seem like it was all really legit and that there were bad people out there saying bad things about them, and I'm just doing, due diligence for them, just to protect them. It was always, you're getting this for a rainy day. Wouldn't you, want to know everything about someone that says something bad about you in case you need to defend yourself someday? And that's how they always sold it to me. And at the time I bought it. So I don't think they're gonna be calling me up anytime soon.
I guess not.
But on that note, Underground Bunker. Make sure you check it out. You can just Google Tony's name.
TonyOrtega.org is the Underground Bunker, and my Twitter is TonyOrtega94. We have a story every day. And really looking forward to my readers seeing this interview. I'm sure they're going to be really interested in it, Mark.
Yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. I'm gonna stop recording, and then I'll talk to you really quick before we go. But thank you everyone for listening. Tony, thanks for coming on the On the Mark show, and peace out, everyone.
I'm Chuck the Iceman Liddell, former UFC light heavyweight champ. Please take a minute to help out Wheelchair Strong Foundation and donate to these warriors. They need your help. Or you might be seeing me in the octagon.